My name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and I'm delighted to welcome Emmet Scott, my dear friend from Community Dental Partners and DSO Secrets to today's podcast or webinars or whatever we're calling them on Zoom these days. And as you know, most of you guys know Emmet through his work on DSO Secrets, which is one of the most active Facebook boards out there that gives amazing amount of information in the form of posts and videos that Emmet's been doing for the last 7 weeks or so since we've been in this crisis. And Emmet's, besides being a prolific host on DSO Secrets, he is also the CEO and co-founder of Community Dental Partners and Smile Magic Dentistry and Braces. It's a DSO, about 30 locations in Texas. And prior to dentistry, Emmet's been an entrepreneur. He was in the financial planning industry, and where he built and sold 2 financial planning firms. And now he is one of the authorities that we all listen to for advice, especially not only before COVID we did that too, but especially now he's built such an incredible group of people that come onto his program and give us timely tips on how we need to be surviving through this crisis and really coming out of it ahead. So welcome, Emmet Scott. What a pleasure having you on this show.
Thank you, Amol. You're awesome. And I was going through all the content that you've created, and it's like, man, it's a treasure trove. So thank you for having me on. As you were going through that bio, one thing that it brought back, and you said crises, and you're talking about financial planning. I went into financial planning in 2000. I was going to be a rock star. I was so excited. 12 months later was the dot-com bust, and I was an idiot. I knew nothing about investing anymore. Anyway, so I think I started my life in crises, and it feels like a few years later, right? I'm in Vegas, and we have 25% unemployment as the housing market collapses. So this is definitely a cycle that, for whatever reason, I've decided to be a part of every time it's a crisis. So.
And yet again, when we read the history of business, you see some of the greatest businesses start in the middle of a crisis, the greatest investments made. Warren Buffett used to say that, since the 1930s, if you look at who was a net purchaser of securities during depressions and recessions and crises, it was the super rich guys, right? They knew, okay, there was a crisis, there's an opportunity there, and sometimes you can make lots of lemonade when there's tons of lemons being handed to you.
Yeah, well, we forget that capitalism, its real power is the down markets, right? We all love the bull market component, but it's the fact that we allow companies to fail. It's the fact that we as entrepreneurs are tested so intensely in the down market and the crises that real innovation happens. And I think in a lot of societies where you have a lot of social safety nets that are, much higher than ours are, that it allows for some of the junk to continue, some of the past to continue. And I think all of us can say that this has been the great accelerator. Anything that we said, ooh, this is coming in the marketplace. Ooh, we're gonna start doing more Zoom calls and virtual meetings at some point. This is the great accelerator of a lot of those things. So if you're riding the wave, if you're taking it, you're feeling that momentum and power. After you finished, getting out of the fetal position and I finished crying and all of that, then yes, you got on the wave and started moving forward. So
absolutely, and I wanted to come because you interviewed so many people over the last few weeks on various ideas about what can we do, from PPP loans to start comeback strategies. One of the questions I have right off the bat for you is, as practices are starting to open back up all over the country, what are some of the things that you're hearing right now from smaller groups, the smaller DSOs? What is kind of the summary of thoughts?
Well, the first thing I'd say is this has been the most interesting social experience ever because it's on a global scale. It's not regional. It's created interesting divisions that aren't by race or wealth or class or anything else. And it's really pushed on all of our mindsets. I've felt that personally. I don't care what size business you have. this hit everyone at a personal level. And I think that's kind of the first principle that I would say, is that there hasn't been as big an advantage or disadvantage as I would have expected based on size. The
Okay.
advantage, yeah, as I've interviewed and talked to some of the biggest groups, and of course, I'm a part of ADSO, I'm on the executive committee there, I'm interfacing with their CEOs, their legal counsel, giving them advice, giving advice, etc. And then I'm, talking to individual practices, of course, involved in DEO and the emerging groups. So it's been really fun to see these data points along the way. And so the first thing I just put out there for people to know is, don't feel like you're at a disadvantage because of resources. And I've had to step back and look at, why is that true? And I think part of it in the equation, and Amol, you can help, tease this out of me and pressure test this, but I think part of it is, the bigger you are, the more complexity you have, right? So you might feel like, oh, they have a lot of resources, but for those of us feeling pain in our own state, and our governor and our dental board and all the things we're complaining, imagine that across 20 states, or, and hygienists in these states and doctors in these states, et cetera.
Right.
And so it probably hasn't given the advantage that you would expect, but mindset has. And we can talk a little bit about that, but I think that's been an interesting divide, not just in America, but in China and those DSOs, as we've talked to them. So I've got some impact, some information from them. And in Europe, the great divide has been mindset.
So mindset as in, how do we approach this crisis? And how do we get out of it proactively? Is that where the mindset is?
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be good. This will push me too. I have a couple notes that I've noticed, but Amol, you really understand business, so I'd love for you to push on this. Part of it is, I think crisis creates a level of fear and a little bit of scattered opportunity all at once, right? And you've got so many data points. I mean,
right,
media and everything else coming in. One of the mindsets that I think has been super powerful is those who can get organized on execution. And, internally in a DSO Secrets, I use the acronym DOPE, to document, organize, prioritize, and then engage. And I think if you're an individual practice, maybe where you've had a disadvantage is you were already kind of scattered on all the things you were excited way before COVID, right? Hey, I'm buying this whitening machine, and then I'm running over here and training on this, and I'm doing this CE class. Now you have all this data point, and you don't have the structure in place to organize ideas, prioritize them, and then engage. So part of the way you've seen that, and again, this can feed up to bigger groups too, is that they've chased after a lot of PPE concepts way before the regulation. Now, I think doing your research is one thing, but one thing I did notice was there was execution before organization prioritization, right? Hey, how much can you get those air purifiers for? Hey, are you able to get these masks? Are you doing this? What do you think this is going to happen? So if that's part of your documentation and research phase, I think it's been appropriate. I think some people have been a little disappointed because they did a lot of work and then they realized, oh, wait, I didn't include my hygienist in the conversation, right? And so now I'm having to backtrack and say, wait, that was actually what I should have done, even more than buying these air purifiers.
That lends me to believe that DSOs are probably more equipped to do the DOPE, which is the acronym you've come up with, is to have a disciplined execution around dealing and handling this crisis, because there are systems and protocols in place. An individual dentist right now is scrambling, right? They want to open, they're calling China if they have to, they're ordering all the PPE. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of communication with their teams. So maybe, and what I feel about this is, as individual practices struggle through opening, I think it could, and again, this is a different topic, but it could tilt the balance in favor of DSOs that are actually properly executing us uh, in the current climate?
So here's what I've noticed so far. You're exactly right. You would think that it's not because it's a DSO, but I think what you're hinting at is it's a DSO because it already had this discipline, right? So the DSO didn't give it the advantage. The mindset gave it the advantage to be able to be multi-practice. And therefore, when this hit, it's partly true. Some DSOs still weren't super organized, were chasing too many rabbits. But one advantage I would say also mindset wise, and I'm seeing this in small groups and in DSOs, is those who did it wrong, the mindset of being humble, ooh, I missed it. So again, because this is current, the hygienist piece is still a little bit hot. I think what I'm noticing is some individual dentists who've missed that part are angry, they're frustrated, and they're doing some blaming around that, right? But there's also individual dentists who are saying, my bad, I needed to include them in the conversation earlier on. I missed this on the checklist of items, so to speak. My communication should have been more intense. So I think ultimately what this boils down to, again, from a mindset perspective, because I like those principles, because you can apply those out even past COVID, is who was the fastest to get humble about their misses. Because even if you've done DOPE, which I love saying that acronym because it's
Right.
and you've organized, prioritized, engaged, you might have prioritized incorrectly. You might have just had a blind spot. You missed communicating with your team, right? But did you own that and say, oh, that was a miss. Let's go back. Let's start working the team through the process. Or did you kind of stand where you're at and you're like, it's because of them. They messed up. I'm mad at them. And you're just wasting valuable time. And that's where I've seen, both DSOs and individual practices can make that mistake because that's a human attribute. But to your point, Amol, maybe part of the reason a DSO has been able to expand is they've got enough humility to be like, I make mistakes on team all the time. I've got to revamp here quickly. I can't outrun my team. And I have seen that in some of the conversations and even webinars I've done where they've identified the problem and they're going back to fix it as quickly as they can.
Well, naturally, right? When you're dealing with a DSO, which is a multi-location type of organization, you have no choice but to get organized, to discipline, to set up protocols and SOPs and all that stuff, right? Because and that comes in handy when crisis comes, because now you're able to take the same discipline, organizational discipline, and execute that better than an individual could on a single practice. So what that begs the second question is, if you are a small group or you don't have, or you're an individual office and you don't have access to all the human resources or the PE cap, whatever the money is, right?
Right.
And you're saying your first comment was that it's an it's not resource bound, which means anybody can today decide to survive and thrive as long as they have a plan and they can execute on that. What advice do you have for people who say they don't have any money or access to money, or they don't have a big DSO C-suite team that's going to help them execute all this?
Well, you've heard this saying, your net worth is your network, right? And we know the power of human connection. So one advantage I think DSOs really have is a built-in network, right? So they have a CFO to run ideas by. They have, they have a COO, et cetera. They can also get caught in, though, their own mindset, which is why they create associations and they create their own networks. So one hack I would give to individual practices and to, emerging groups is do not let your network be Facebook. If that's all you've got, you're getting poor information and a mixture of mindsets that may not be servicing you well. So I have seen a differentiation. For example, those who are in DEO, and I'll do a little plug for them, but the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization naturally filtered doctor mindsets, right? Who are more entrepreneur, who are trying to learn leadership. And
Right.
it's been fascinating to watch. Again, this has been an acceleration process, watching that group versus, and being able to versus a Facebook group, et cetera, and how they're solving. And, a lot of people don't like consultants. I always say consultants give me two things. Either they give me clarity on where I'm missing stuff, which everyone loves them when they do that. Like,
Right.
hey, what if you did this? Oh, brilliant. You just
Right.
paid for yourself. But the other thing they give me is confidence. Sometimes the consultant comes in or my network comes in and Amol says, hey, Emmet, have you thought of this, this, and this? And I go, yeah, I actually have. Here's my system. Well, as soon as that happens, Amol, guess what I start doing? Wow, Amol just confirmed that what I'm doing is right. I'm going to go faster. Maybe I was tiptoeing the concept. Now I'm going to start. So if I can get clarity or I can get confidence, and I think a network does that. So if I said, man, this PPP stuff's really confusing. Am I supposed to do this or am I supposed to do this? If everyone says, we don't know yet, I know not to put any time and energy into going through those cycles. If someone says, oh, here's the answer, I talked to an attorney, this is what they said, I don't need to hire an attorney. I just saved what, $500 an hour, $300 an hour. So that network has just been such an amazing accelerator. And I think it's a hack. And I think even being involved, Amol, with someone like you, who's got such a big network, who's got all of these videos and curriculum on your site, like how much do you really have to pay to have that much team around you all of a sudden and grab all that mindset? Like it's huge. So yeah, I think that I don't think the gap is as big as maybe people perceive, and they
I
could
think
overcome it.
if you seek it at the right place, right? And you're absolutely correct. Sometimes these Facebook groups get inundated with like 90% negativity, or just one thread would just keep having this emotional response to it so much that you get consumed by it. Which I try not to go into too many groups. Obviously, I visit yours and I post at DSO Secrets, but you've got to be really careful about getting all your news from audio information from social media, because again, it's not really vetted as much, and it's driven by extreme opinions, and sometimes you don't need any more extreme opinions than what we already need.
Do you know what
So
I love about them, Amal? I
yeah,
love seeing my competition totally implode themselves.
right,
So to me, those who are like giving and creating abundance, right? We really don't have the competition because we're just building on how do we bring more value to the customer? How do we bring more value to the customer? But
right.
those who are really struggling, start blaming, pointing fingers. I'm like, oh, cool. That's where my competition's going. And
Yes.
I'm just going to focus on this value creation. So again, it's been interesting to see that great divide kind of happen in real time. It was probably happening slowly, right? There's civil wars and different parts that I've watched having come into this industry for the last 10 years. But this really accelerated some of that and amplified it.
So the answer to question number two is, even if you don't have access to resources and PE capital, whatever it is, you have your network, and you need to be networking intelligently, asking for help, not relying entirely on Facebook, but expanding and looking out of the box of who could help you. I mean, obviously at Patient Prism Academy, at DSO Secrets, there's lots of amazing people who are absolutely committed, without trying to sell you anything, to truly help this industry, because we love and care. This is our family. And I miss seeing you guys. I miss seeing everybody out there on the circuit, right? Because it was part of my life. And that's the key, is to take advantage of people who are actually wanting to help this industry move forward.
And Amal, I've been in places, you've been in places where you needed capital and you just pick up the phone and you start calling the group and you say, hey, here's what I'm trying to solve, right? And you're very good, for that, having that network. So again, if you're missing resources, you're probably more missing network, or you're not taking advantage of your network. So get into a better network would be, your biggest resource.
I know one of the examples I give about that is a community banks, right? Sometimes you have your relationships with, you have a bank account with some large bank, and I'm nothing against them, but sometimes you will have great luck with people in your community, smaller banks that will work with you, that'll understand you, that understand your business, and you might be able to get some help in that regard. So sometimes you just have to, because you've dealt with certain institution before doesn't mean that's the only place you go to help for.
That's a great example. In fact, when we were opening our first practice, just kind of dovetailing into that, I couldn't get any bank. I mean, we had this crazy idea and we wanted way more than usually you want on a first practice, et cetera. And no big bank was interested. This community bank who only loaned in this small region. In fact, when we opened our second practice, like 10 miles away, they couldn't fund it, did our initial de novo location for us. And so you're exactly right. Build that network and you could, find gold.
So one of the things you do well is you hunt for great ideas from all corners of the world, the globe. You said China, Europe, United States. What can dental practices and DSOs, small or large, do to stay ahead of the curve as they're opening up? Right? What are some of the things that you're hearing are amazing hacks that they can use?
Okay, so before I get into like products, I do want to get into concept first. And the first concept is you really got to know what your customer is most interested in. And I think a lot of dentists and entrepreneurs sometimes skip over that and they go right into kind of the cool and shiny. And the customer I'd be most interested in is obviously my patients. We've been sitting in Facebook groups saying what our patients are going to be concerned about. Why don't we just go ask them and say, hey, what's your biggest concern, right? And we might find out, one, they're not nearly as educated as we are about aerosols and other things. And they want to see that the door handles have been wiped down. Okay. They only know what they've been seeing at Home Depot, Walmart, etc. If you're doing something similar to that, or maybe slightly more, they think you're amazing. So that doesn't mean you can't do more. It's just knowing where your customer's at. And then I go to my doctors and say, hey, docs, what do you feel like you need? You might find out docs want this or that, etc. Hygienists, staff members, once they're satisfied, I've solved 95% of my momentum right there, right? Because now I've got doctors looking at patients, looking at doctors, and everyone feels confident with one another. I got hygienists looking at patients, everyone feeling confident. That by itself is going to be the biggest innovation, if you will, that I can do. And I think we kind of move too quickly and forget about the human element of this in that. Now, having said that, what am I doing? Obviously, the virtual components are going to become even more accelerated, okay? And part of it, frankly, is just going to be consumers making excuses for convenience, all right? Maybe I'm not really concerned about COVID-19, but I sure like the idea of, being able to online schedule, right? Like I wanted that before. Now you just gave me another reason why I want that. So I think things like online scheduling, two-way texting. I think every industry is going to get hit by this new thing called two-way texting. I don't know how COVID-19 relates to this, but none of us like to do phone calls. So we're going to find a way to say that it relates and that we only want to text to one another. So I think that's going to get more intense. We're feeling that at our call center. We've rolled out two-way texting. We're noticing people want to move to that rather than having to do the phone call. Telehealth, we've got regulation, which I think is going to get stripped down faster around telehealth. So again, crises become the great accelerators. So where we have some past regulation, I think some of that's going to have to get out of the way for what the consumers want going forward. So I think anything you're doing around thinking about that. Now, I would make sure I had a consumer that was interested in that. If I had a 70+ consumer who's happy that they can call their grandkids every week, they're probably not trying to find the app to do telehealth tomorrow. They want to know some other things are in place. But definitely if I've got the millennials who are like, hey, do you have the telehealth yet? I'd start moving in that direction. Digital marketing, we've all spent way too much time in our social media. I wonder if we're going to pull back a little bit or if we're now pretty addicted in how it's utilized. Either way, we've really ramped up our social media team in general. And I expect that to continue to accelerate. So I think these are all really good investments to be making. How we communicate on the phone, I know, Amol, you have a lot of resources around that. I think that's critical. It's interesting because I walked into to a grocery store and people were wearing masks, and I emotionally picked up on something. I couldn't tell if they were happy or mad at me. I didn't realize how much I look at facial expression and how to interact with other humans. I was super dependent upon their voice inflection. Like emotionally, like, do I need to be a little more gentle with this person? Are they having a hard day? Do I need to be a little more happy? My personality is pretty gregarious. So it's like, where do I need to like up it or bring it down? And I realized this is how call centers are all the time. Like, people can't see them, right? So how important it is, our voice inflection, whether it's at a call center. And now the same issues you had with call center, you actually have with your front desk and your back office, right? Because no one can see their face anymore, their facial expression. So voice inflection, I think, is something that I would, put some investment into. In fact, we're taking some of the call center mindset and resources and bringing those down to the practice because of that.
It's music to my ears. Obviously, we're in that business of figuring out, and as we notice an uptick in volume of phone calls, one of the things we are noticing is some practices are just not used to the new normal. So they're taking these phone calls as if it's pre-COVID, right? So now your communication, your inflection, your confidence, your ability to make people safe and trust you it's way more heightened than ever before.
Yes.
And we're creating actually some new ideas around how do we understand when the receptionist or the call center agent is not communicating safety to the patient. Super important on the phone as well as in the office.
Well, Amol, you've been super focused on this, and you're right. I think this just got more intense because there's another emotional part that's happened. As the patients walked in, they've always felt a level of insecurity being in a dental office, the white coat concept and all of that. Like, am I doing enough? I'm not flossing, all of those things, right? And you've been really good on training on that connection, safety, friendliness component. Well, how much have you felt that even walking into a Target or Walmart lately? Like, oh, do I have my mask? Am I supposed to have a mask? Is it supposed to be this big or this small? How close can I get to people? It's almost like the whole world has turned into dental offices now where we feel this insecurity, right?
Right.
And am I doing things the right way? We almost like don't know what we're supposed to do with anyone right now. What happens when your staff is super friendly, when the voice inflection's right, people are like, oh, I'm in a safe place. Oh, I can be myself here, right? There's so much rules and restrictions. I think it increases anxiety. It increases insecurity. And if we solve for that, that's way bigger than dental, but people will say, I really love that dental office. Wow, I love going in there. And it might be at a psych level, that's actually the place where everyone seems comfortable, calm, and safe because of everything you've done.
And I think, you bring up such an incredible point, because if dental offices can get their infection control measures and PPE stuff right, and then get the communication right, then they could potentially talk to patients saying that, hey, this is going to be safer than going to Whole Foods or Home Depot, right? Because we've got it covered, right? We've thought through it. Our mindset is your safety. And obviously you go into grocery stores all throughout this pandemic. The chances of them would have been higher. Not that, but so I think sometimes there's so much fear about this aerosols and how dentistry is going to come back. I feel that if dental offices can focus on that, obviously getting the protocols right, putting the all the infection control right, but at the same time get a playbook on communication on the phone, in your office. It's going to be a game changer, and that's the only way I believe. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is we're going to get back to the production that we need to get back to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes with all the Facebook, we could get caught up in the idea that people don't want to get back to normal. That is not true. Like, people want to get back to normal as much as possible. So I think as quickly as you can move into that realm of safety and confidence again, they'll move there with you. You know, you hit on one other point. I just want to put a pin in it on the aerosol point, because it's another mindset component. One of the things that when I see something like that come out, hey, aerosol, here's the issue, dentistry is the most dangerous, I can't help but want to know what the research is, what the white papers are around that. And so I dig in. So that's another mindset, is like, know where the truth is. You know, never trust the experts who never saw what's happening coming. All right. So the reality is, no one's an expert. You've got to go figure this out yourself and determine. And it might feel weird, like, really, can I know more than XYZ agency or XYZ? Absolutely, you can. Right. Absolutely. The research is available. So one thing I'd put out there, look at aerosols. And one of the things that bothered me and also my clinicians is, if dentistry is one of the most dangerous places, why isn't it a sick bed of infection every year? You know, dentistry's been around for a while. Why don't we have data around that? So here's something interesting, Amol, and I think this is getting out there now. The suction system, the HVE system, reduces aerosol by 95%. So it is true that if I'm doing a research study against ambient air, aerosol increases the amount of bacteria and virus in the air by 30 times. Okay, so that by itself scares the dickens out of me, right? If I add suction, which I hope everyone has suction, it reduces it by 95%. Now, you add a couple other things like a mask, and you're actually cleaner than ambient air in a dental office. So that's just like, it's a little bit mind-blowing. And then I started thinking, wait, so is walking through the hallways in Walmart, the aisles of Walmart, actually more dangerous than a dental office? And the answer, I think, scientifically is yes. You know. Oh, you're on mute.
You're so right about this, because, you know, the media drives some of this hysteria in our society, right? Because you present facts from a certain standpoint. I mean, there was a report 2 days ago where it said, oh my God, the number of deaths are going to double based on some model. Okay, and then everybody is hysterical because I'm like, oh my God, number of deaths are going to double. Just because there's aerosols in the air, that doesn't mean that's going to be leading to all sorts of infections, because otherwise we would be all sick. You're right. Going to dental offices, oh my God, everybody felt sick because we went to a dentist. It didn't happen.
Now, here's the dichotomy of leadership, though, that I think is difficult. So I can do that research, and I like to do that research, and I understand it. Then I have to turn around and be completely empathetic to my team who's scared to death. I can't be arrogant with them. I can't say, well, you obviously haven't done the research. You know, I have to sit down with them and say, where's your biggest concerns? Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know, and see if I can lead them to a place of confidence. So again, I think that being a single practice or being a DSO, and in some ways a DSO's got to do this across even more locations, more people. So it can be more challenging. But at a single location, you can be doing that right now, and you can be in momentum tomorrow around some of these things.
You know, the question that becomes, and the Health Policy Institute came up with the study that, oh my God, dental spending is going to be down anywhere between 30 to 50%. And all of us are scared, right? How do we get back to production? If we're down 30%, Emmet, what does the doctor take home?
Right.
And what is that like? Because you're paying everybody else and there's nothing for you to take home. And so how do we get back in the situation? Just like the restaurants, right? If restaurants are operating at 50% capacity, they are losing money, right? Even if that's 70% capacity, because the margins are so small. In the case of dentistry, 30% reduction in production. So where do is that, I mean, it scares everyone. So there's got to be some answers to that.
I'm actually really excited about it. And now that's going to sound crazy, but before COVID, 65% of people, according to ADA and other studies with Marco, et cetera, 65% of people were not going to the dentist. Okay. Now think about that. What's the opportunity basket that's been sitting there, not because of COVID-19, because of our inadequacies and our inability to access the customer, because we were allowing the mind share of other products to enter instead of oral health. Okay. So what I look at is what's in my control. Now, if I'm a cell phone carrier and 125% of people have cell phones, which means they have more than one, that market gets a little bit tough, right? Now it's like, okay, how are we going to access? I got to push out Samsung here. I got to do this over there. That gets brutal to me. But if 65% of people didn't have a cell phone today, Amol, and you and I were starting a cell phone company, I don't care what disaster is going on. There is freaking opportunity there that we just haven't taken advantage of. I mean, clearly, you know, some of those innovations that you and I talked through, we weren't doing them as quickly as we needed to. And this is just pushing, saying, you got to be doing them now. Your call center sucked. It's time to get it better. So anything you're losing off of this COVID component, trust me, there's twice as much there that you weren't getting before if you'll just get better. So I'm not concerned about it. I understand that it is a challenge. I understand at our current par, it's going to push us down. But as we started this conversation off, that's where our brains and our innovation is going to say, all right, Emmett, you've been wasting time not taking advantage of this stuff. Go take advantage of it. And Amol, we might see that if we do this with the right mindset, we might be at 125% of where we were previously, because we stepped up and we took care of the customer. So that's how I'm looking at it.
You know, I love this mindset of yours, because it only encourages me to work harder and improve my own business models. You're absolutely right. There's a vast blue ocean of patients sitting out there that you have not even tapped into, and that are willing to come and get dental care. So why not calibrate our marketing better? Why not communicate better? Why not look at our case acceptance rates and figure out ways to present better? And get those unscheduled treatments back in the line, adopt new technology. And you know, I have a small example. A personal friend of mine in Tampa has 2 offices, and I just spoke to him 2 days ago, and I said, hey, how was April? He's like, I did 95% of last April. 95% of April year before.
Wow.
And I said, what happened? Is like the day this the stay-at-home orders were issued and only emergency care was allowed, he had 5 billboards in town. He instantly changed them the next day, open for emergencies, right? And all his advertising, Google AdWords, Facebook, everything else got into PP mode. And all of a sudden, he's got new patients coming in the door. With emergencies, he's got billboards running around all over the place, and he's right there. So don't blame the crisis, right? Let's just proactively go after the patients. And I think you're absolutely right, Emmett, is that the people who take action now and fix the stuff that they were not doing are going to come out to be, 100, 120%.
Absolutely. And do you know what your friend also had? He had clinical capability to service those patients. Okay. You know, I'm just going to call this out a little bit here because it's a reality. Some dentists got caught realizing that there was capabilities they didn't have and that they couldn't actually step into the emergency care realm. And again, this is a mindset one. Some of them have used this time to get their clinical capability better. And some of them use that time to complain about all your friends who were open and that they shouldn't have been open. So who's going to have the greater advantage 7 weeks later coming out of this? The dentist who sat down, and I don't care if they did it in the last 7 weeks, if they'll do it over the next 2 years and say, my clinical capability needs to be in a place that I am critical to this infrastructure, that I am critical to be able to take care of patients, then they will always have opportunities. So
we could absolutely talk about this all the time for an entire day, because there's so many things to talk about. But what's a good way for people to get a hold of you? Obviously, and we're going to put this up your blog and in your Facebook page. But if people want questions, they have questions all the time. Is there a way that they can reach you?
Yeah, so the best way, I'm very active on DSO Secrets Facebook page. Please come over there, ask questions. You don't have to be a DSO. We share the secrets with everyone. But come in there. If you really have something that you want to PM me over, send me a message. I'm great with that. And then the next level is to get into something like DEO. And if you've got another network that you really like, that you want to get into, great, but find that network. You know, in DEO, it just gets a little bit more intimate, and being able to like solve individual team problems, personal problems, business problems. So that would be the next level. If people wanted a taste of this, by the way, Amol, we do have a summit with DEO coming up.
Yes.
And so I would strongly encourage, it will be virtual. We just did one that was virtual. We actually got better ratings on that than we did on our normal DEO summits. And I think our normal ones are great, but I'll be hosting that. So over in DSO Secrets, we've got the banner there. I'll be putting a coupon code in there too for people that they can utilize.
And if you give that coupon code to our team, we'll put this on the banner here. DEO is one of the best organizations on the planet when it comes to helping you grow and scale your business. And there's no better time, and there's no better abundant people in dentistry than the DEO, who are willing to help you without expecting anything back in return. It's the most amazing group of people I've ever met in my life. And thanks to faculty like you, Darren and Jake, have built a phenomenal support network that actually is going to come in very handy for you, especially during this time. So
yeah, and I'll tell you, just from a mindset, I'll just end on this. It was just so cool. Jake Poole looked and watched as his summit market, the event market, was decimated. We felt bad in dental. They hit it 10 times worse. He pivoted, and as a true entrepreneur, set the example for all of those who were dentists and DSOs, and said, guys, we're going to come out of this even better. Held an event, like I said, that even got better reviews. So just the mindset that's in there is going to get you into abundance and get you going. So anyway, Amol, I know you're a great contributor on DEO too. So thank you.
thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion. We'll do one next month to see where things are. But it's always a pleasure. I learned so much, and I feel so much positivity and inspiration to work harder and be better and build a better business. When I hear you talk, you are a gift to all of us. And thank you so much for what you do for this.
Yeah, thank you, brother. You're awesome.